Near mint condition, the home of collected editions. Oh my gosh, look at that panel of Batman. You have the absolute, you have the deluxe. DC Comics firing on all cylinders.
Hello everybody, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Suicide Squad Trial by Fire DC Finest trade paperback. Let's get into it. Hello everybody, I am Dom of X, the manager of said near mint condition, and today we're going to be taking a first look once again at the Suicide Squad Trial by Fire trade paperback. Here is a look at the front of the book with the cover to issue 2, and Trial by Fire, of course, a reference to the story in issue 2 of the Suicide Squad. Here is a look at the spine of the trade paperback from the years 1986 to 1988 with the front shot of the 8 people of said Suicide Squad. Amanda leading the front from issue number 1 in the fight to serve the country. And last but not least, here is a look at the back. One thing I've noticed about the trade paperbacks is they don't always have the same font face, font type. Sometimes they're a little bit more spaced out. Sometimes they're italicized, sometimes they're not. But you do have the key synopsis there on the back and some covers of the books that are collected in here, including Legends, Millennium. I have a lot to get into, so let's go ahead and take a look inside. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at DC Finest Suicide Squad Trial by Fire trade paperback. Here is a look again at the front. Here's a look at the inside collection cover with Luke McDonnell art. Very, very prominent artist at the time, and also the main artist for the Suicide Squad series. Here on the left-hand side, you do have the copyrighted material information, along with the editorial teams that worked on this specific collected edition, along with Suicide Squad and Legends. Here is the table of contents, and as you can see, you have all of the issues here in and out, and obviously, no, because this is a modern comic, there is no stamp here for any censorship or reimaginings or anything of the sort that we've seen from the Golden, Silver, and Bronze Age DC Finest trade paperbacks. In this specific collected edition, it is, again, 560 pages for the $39.99 price point, collecting Suicide Squad 1 through 10, Secret Origins 14, Detective Comics 582, Fury of Firestorm 62 to 64, Firestorm the Nuclear Man Annual number 5, Legends 1 through 6, and Pages from Millennium number 4. Previously collected in different trade paperbacks, at least for Suicide Squad, issues 1 through 10 were collected in a line of 8 volumes that collected the entirety of the Suicide Squad 1987 run, along with crossovers such as Doom Patrol Suicide Squad and subsequent concurrent ongoings that also feature them, including Checkmate, Manhunter, and Captain Atom, not to be confused with the 2005 runs, obviously made in the post-crisis world thereafter. Legends 1 through 6 is also collected before in the Legends Collection Trade Paperback Edition, along with the 30th Anniversary Edition. And along in this, we do have Millennium number 4, which I did mention. It was previously collected in a trade paperback, along with excerpts and pages in the Booster Gold Future Lost hardcover that came out 4 years ago, if my mind serves correctly. Detective Comics 582, which is one of the biggest and, surprisingly nice additions to these trade paperbacks, will also be collected in Batman the Killing Joke and Other Stories. It wasn't in year 1 and year 2. The misillicit on year 1 and year 2, we had 568 to 580, or 568 to 579, and then obviously you will get the 580 and onwards in that specific trade paperback. So what is Legends, and why am I so happy to see this in this trade paperback? I think if there is any DC event that is better for introductory or people who haven't experienced the DC Universe, experienced the events, look no further than Legends, this 6-issue miniseries that some people have been clamoring for to be printed out in an omnibus format. Legends is the story of legends. And they remark, if I had a nickel for every single time that they uttered the word legend in this specific book, not counting the covers, I would be a millionaire, because they reference every single character in this book. If you are looking for an introduction to the post-crisis landscape of certain characters, such as Billy Batson, aka Captain Marvel at this time, not Shazam. If you're looking for Dinah Lance, if you are looking for the first appearances of the Suicide Squad, which is actually why I presume, and correctly so, have in here as their first appearances, look no further than this. So Task Force X is created, and first off in the hand with this, the Fourth World, you got Darkseid, Desaad, and the Female Furies also thrown in here, making their headway into the DC Universe in full. Batman, you are all introduced to them here. You find out what their powers are, how they work with and against each other, and they also go into some deeper themes, or themes that will also pop up later in the books that were to follow this, because this was the runway and launch point for the brand new Justice League, the brand new Billy Batson book by Jerry Ordway, and then of course Suicide Squad, which this also famously spins out of. I think that is why that we have a lot of fondness for this, because we saw Amanda Waller here first. We saw Enchantress here fighting alongside Task Force X, whatever that might have entailed. We saw that here first and in full. Captain Boomerang there on the bottom fighting Flash. Finds out, hey, maybe this isn't the Barry Allen that you think of, because he's calling him Kid Flash. So what's up with that? You have the runway for the rest of these books, and then of course here is the famous cover with Billy Batson and the rest of the DC heroes, Guy Gardner, who will eventually join the Justice League. Glorious Godfrey is also in here, so if you want to talk about a book for introductory beginners, or if you're not familiar that much with the DC Universe, look no further than Legends. This story is by John Ostrander with dialogue from Len Wein, along with the pencils in by one of the masterminds of the 1980s, and soon to be Man of Steel, Adventures of Superman, action comic, Superman writer, and artist, and penciler. All of the above, John Byrne. It's crazy to think that he was on so many books at this point, and moving from DC to Marvel, and Marvel to DC, back and forth. Insane to think about just in the space of that. But the specific themes that also, like I mentioned earlier, that are covered in this are the questions of morality. What line do you cross as a superhero? Is it okay to go here and say, hey, is it okay to kill? Is it okay to take the life of another if you are a superhero? You have the role of the government also playing a big part in Legends, and should the concept of a superhero be outlawed? There are so many things that are being played in this book that they would reverberate throughout later in, of course, Suicide Squad and Justice League. It is crazy to think that they would have the foresight so far to do this, but it is very pleasant to see some people getting mashed up. You got Batman and Guy Gardner punching things, and every single case towards. I will say that there will be minor spoilers. I will try not to give you guys too much, but I do have to talk about it from here on forward to give you the idea of what this Task Force X is and why it is so important in the scope of the DC universe. So yes, if you are not familiar with any of these characters, Legends is the book for you. We also do have this case throughout because we are introduced to the Suicide Squad, formerly in Secret Origins number 14, where we find out not only the backstory of the Suicide Squad, but also Amanda Waller and her raising here in the United States. We saw plenty of her family members suffer through with some of the programs that the government has had, and she also recounts the case of this is why the JSA disbanded, and also the secrecy to Harry S. Truman's Task Force X, where we find out that this Suicide Squadron was laid out to do some of the government's darkest deeds. Of course, we have the introduction to Rick Flag, and also the introduction to some of these other characters and montage shots that are done in Secret Origins 14. But most importantly, we find out that Amanda Waller is not only talking to Ronald Reagan, but she is telling the president, I want to be in charge of this with no strings attached. This is her and only her operation to follow. She wants to see it laid in full. She wants to see her vision of the Suicide Squad be played out to its highest potential, and that is to cooperate or make certain superhuman villains cooperate with each other to do darker deeds, I should say, than not with the government, in high-stakes missions, low-stakes missions, and she wants to see that fully realized throughout. President Reagan gives in, and we have the birth of the Suicide Squad. One or two stories. These are very, very short, you could say one-shots. Some of these are one-shots, some of these are two-parters. These are very succinct stories where we get to see the first villains thrown into the wind. The Jihad are the first villains that show up in Suicide Squad, and they, of course, have to fight them. Suicide Squad, again, you get the first outlook as to how Amanda Waller is going to run this team. And one of my favorite things about this book, and specifically, are these montage shots. These debriefing missions where you go panel by panel. Sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 15 panels on the page with her talking about these villains and what you have to run in. It's like, okay, like you're being fed this information, but you are given the headshots, sort of like I watch a lot of sports documentaries, and in sports documentaries, oftentimes before a team would play another team, you get to see a coach running down to film saying, this is what this player does really well. Well, in that same case, Amanda Waller does the same thing and tells the Suicide Squad, hey, you are going to do whatever needs to be done in the case for these guys. This is where we find out the Suicide Squad are going to be running into. All in the case of this, you got Nightshade, you have Amanda Waller obviously running things, Bronze Tiger, who is the strongest man out there, Captain Boomerang, a former Flash villain, you have Enchantress, who was never trained in magic before, but she can do all these different magic tricks, you have Plastique, Rick Flag, of course Floyd Lawton, who is really what this series made me love Floyd Lawton as a character. I would never have imagined saying that before reading any of these issues, but by golly, he is such a fun character to read, to also see how Luke McDonnell envisions the panels with him. It's very fun to see, and something that also got a hold off with me is that, like I said earlier, you get to see the Suicide Squad be in missions that are both in the large macro and the micro of it. Sometimes they're global. They get to go to Moscow, or in the case of the first two issues, you get to see them play their part in the Middle East. Some of them are Waller trying to tell them, hey, like, there's this one person in this one city that you need to take care of. So some of them are street level, some of them are to the ground level of these missions. So you get a case of both. This is what's happening around the world in DC Universe, and you also get the little parts too. You get both scapes in full, and I think that is one of the strongest parts of this book, is that you get an all-encompassing title that deals with world problems and also city problems, and to see how the team reacts to each case is something that is fascinating. And you should also see the team trying in the case like, oh wait, this mission has to deal specifically with Apocalypse, they have to deal with Lashina, they have to deal with different characters from different time slots. Like, it is so ridiculously fun to see how they cooperate with each other and against the rest. Sometimes it's them disguising themselves, because Enchantress has the wild ability to be able to do that. You get to see the different powers just sort of mix and match between all of them, and what makes this book stand out. It is so fun and refreshing to have a title like this, where the creativity of not only John Ostrander but Luke McDonnell in figuring out how to panel all of this. Sometimes it's panel shooting a gun across the page, or a shot of an eye, or something like that, right? Where you get to see the different storytelling elements that these two are able to do because of how all-encompassing this title is. And this also references Legends a lot. I don't know if I mentioned, I kind of mentioned that earlier in the overview, but this book in specific references these first 6 issues a lot, because these 6 issues have to deal with sort of the fallout of, or not the fallout, but the fallout of this is that the Suicide Squad have to deal with everything that was encompassed in these 6 issues. So this is a big credit to DC and their collected editions department, and not only adding this, but you getting to see the different viewpoint of some of these characters. Like, for example, with Firestorm by John Ostrander and Joe Brzezowski, who does the illustration for these books. You see that Firestorm is not only in those Legends series, or in that 6-issue series, but something also happens tragically to one of the people. And in this case, you have Ronnie Raymond and Professor Martin Stein being the older one. Something very tragic happening to Martin Stein, and he has to deal with it. And they also have to deal with that same fallout from Legends, because they fought one of the biggest villains, or one of the main villains in that Legends series, and they have to deal with the after effects of that. And it's so well drawn out, and the publishing, specifically in this book, and the mapping, I think makes up for the perfect case in you're going to experience some wild things, not only from the Suicide Squad's point of view, but everybody else's point of view, because the Amanda Waller point of view is different from how Ronnie Raymond and Martin Stein, and you get to see later with Batman, it's very different from how they look at the situations too. And because of that, you will have issues where Amanda Waller explicitly tells people that if Firestorm, or if these people get in her business, she is going to have to deal with them. The trauma is so well drawn out and so thought out that I can't stop reading and going from page to page. And sometimes I reread these issues just to make sure that, hey, am I reading this right? Is that what they say? Are they actually going to follow that out? You are left no breathing room, but in a good way, because you want to see what happens next to some of these characters. And I think that is the strongest part of Suicide Squad, is that characters that I never thought I would end up liking or even tolerating, you feel for them because they're just thrown into the wildest situations, not even knowing if their lives are going to be okay. Sometimes it is the case of you're just drawn out in these missions that there is no guarantee that even if you do succeed, you're gonna go home safe, because the next thing that pops up might be the thing that kills you. And you get to see that after issue 2, there are no apologies for some of the unfortunate circumstances that end up happening because of this title. This is, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons to why DC and why this title just works out so well. And why this specific edition also draws out so well too, because Batman also is tossed into the wind with this. And with this, I actually want to end off with the look at Millennium number 4. Millennium number 4 is part of the larger Millennium storyline that I didn't get a chance to talk about earlier, but in case you haven't read it, and because they don't include all of it like they do with Legends, Millennium number 4 is part of a larger story called Millennium by Steve Englehart, where we find out that there are guardians outside who want to make sure that the human portion of our society reaches the next evolution. So they send these manhunters, those same manhunters that you see in Jeff Johns' Green Lantern Secret Origin arc. If you have read Jeff Johns' Green Lantern, you get to see those manhunters played in. And one of the wardens, Warden Economos, says you have to take one of those manhunter bases out. And that is how Batman gets drawn into the fold. You also get to see other characters like Captain Atom who get tossed into this. And really, overall, you're just being pulled by all of these strings with characters that cannot control any of these situations. They can only control what they can. And it is such a fascinating read that I can't even fathom how, if I was reading all of those titles in the late 80s, if I was reading Manhunter, if I was reading Captain Atom, or if I was reading Firestorm, how you could just go and say, like, this is just a well thought and drawn out part of the DCU. And if you love dramas, if you like high stakes, look for this book. It's got great action, it's got great characters, and it's got a lot of love thrown in here. So definitely one of my favorite DC Finest to date. Now, one of your guys' questions might be, should I buy this trade paperback or should I buy the omnibus that's coming out later this year for this? This is very much the same mapping as the Doom Patrol DC Finest, which also follows a lot of that same Silver Age omnibus hardcover that came out years ago, first anyways, and then got a brand new edition this year. In that same manner, in retrospect, we do have a Suicide Squad omnibus that is due and set out to be later this year. Now, this omnibus is going to be retailing for $125, while this DC Finest goes in at $40. At the price content per page, you are getting a little bit more as far as these are concerned in the trade paperback. Not to say that the omnibus won't be worth it, but I would rather have all of this material in for the $40 instead of the $125. But if you're looking for higher quality read-through, better scans and whatnot, I would suggest bumping up the page count and also that price up to getting the omnibus later this year. It doesn't look like there are going to be any differences as far as mapping is concerned, or even in the collected issues that are going to be concerned with this. You have a lot of those ancillary issues of Firestorm, Checkmate, Manhunter that are probably going to be in later editions of the Suicide Squad. I don't think we're going to be getting any post-2000 Suicide Squad, if this is the indicator that we do have for DC Finest. So that is going to be my 2 cents for the omnibus. And that, as they say, is that. Now, if you want to buy this, check out our sponsors.
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that's going to be it from me. I am Dom of X. Let me know in the comments section down below if you're planning to pick any of these up, or if this book up, or if this interests you. Let me know, because this is definitely one of my favorites. That's it for me. You be you. Stay fresh, Minties, and please stay safe.